Welcome to Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your essence and live from a place of personal freedom. If you're interested in learning more about our courses, mentoring and workshops, feel free to visit wayoftheheart.com.au. We're so glad you're here and we hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of Heart Riffing, a podcast by way of the heart. I'm Jess and this is Bello.
Hello.
And today I wanted to talk a little bit about something that we look at a lot in Way of the Heart. It actually underpins everything, but I feel like we need a couple of key definitions around it. It's this idea of essence.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about when we say essence? What's it in relation to?
Yeah. So when we talk about essence, we're really talking about core self, what Henry Nguyen would call true self. So Henry Nguyen was really quite helpful in this. He wrote a couple of books in and around this topic, but he used to talk about true self, false self, separate self. So false self would be the person that we present in terms of ego when we're in our ego. False self would be that projection, which is a persona, which is not who we really are, but it's who we think we need to be in order to get needs met. That's a false self. And then he would talk about a separate self. A separate self is a self that's actually believes the propaganda of the false self, and so you become something completely unrelated to who you are at the core of your being. But true self is who you really are. You're organic, you're indigenous, you're true self. And so when we're talking about essence, we're talking about that. We're talking about your true self, who you are substantively, without any additions, without any socialization, without any kind of interference. True self or essence is the core of your being. Another guy called Paul Tillich would call it the ground of your being. So the ground. So when I am trying to live a grounded and a centered life, I'm coming back to the ground of my being, which is coming back to true self, which is coming back to essence. So it's this idea that you are something.
Yeah.
You are something. Before you try and become something, you actually are something. And we're trying to identify and we're trying to call people back to that fundamental thing that they are, which is complete, whole, beautiful, amazing. And then the heart is your heart as an energetic agent is the representative of that essence.
How are they linked? Because they're kind of the same, but not really the same. When you say it's the, representative agent of that, if I'm just getting my head wrapped around what essence is, how do we then look at the heart and essence in tandem with one another?
Yeah, so I think in that regard, essence is what is fundamentally or primarily or organically there. It's the seed that has the imprint of who you are. The seed is planted in the soil, and the soil nurtures. So in that kind of metaphor, the soil which nurtures the seed is, acts to supply the seed with everything it needs to become a sapling, to become a tree. Then the soil is playing the part of the agent.
Oh, I see.
Do you know what I mean? It's the surrounding. So in the human being, we look at heart in way of the heart. We look at heart as an energetic force. So the heart is the energy that is most connected to the essence of who we are. Like my brain is not connected to the essence of who I am. My brain is off big prefrontal cortex, big computer systems, a little bit slow sometimes, not just mine, but everyone's.
Thanks, awesome, great.
Yeah. Mine can be very slow on occasions, but a big computer system processing a lot of data, making up a lot of very complex stories, synthesizing, analyzing, rationalizing, all that. Thank you. It's very, very worthwhile. Sometimes not connected to essence at all. Sometimes off in its own little world. Emotions often, are just responding to stimulus. A lot of the time, stimulus response or stimulus react. And then you have your emotions connected to your, amygdala, or your limbic system. So you're then having a neurochemical response to stuff. So your emotions are tied into all of that. Again, not tied necessarily into the essence of who I am. Physicality, obviously, externally orientated, ego orientated to meet needs. So all those four different energetic sources are externally focused. The singular energy that is internally focused is heart energy, and it's focused, or it centers on, or is activated. It itself is activated by essence. It doesn't do anything contrary to, heart doesn't do anything contrary to essence. And so heart acts, and we talk about this in our first Landscape of the Heart course. Heart is the agent, advocate, is the ally, advocate, and agent of your essence. So it has this symbiotic relationship where it is allied to essence. It sticks close to it. It's woven, enmeshed in your essence. It speaks with the voice of your essence, and it takes what is internal. As an agent, it takes what is internal and it expresses it externally.
And this is something that this idea of internal versus external is also one of the core philosophies that underpins Way of the Heart, that we, typically are conditioned to get a lot of our sense of identity from that which is external to us, and to judge our value based on what is external to us.
Yeah.
Whereas the purpose of Way of the Heart is to bring you back to your essence, which is completely internal.
Completely.
And to operate from that space, right?
Yeah. And I think, look, we're not mystical or mythical about this.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone is born, and the moment that you're born, you're given a name, and then you're given a gender nomination. Oh, Greg, here is this. I bought a beautiful little boy. Let's call him Greg. Okay, so from that moment on, I'm a boy and I'm a Greg, and I go into a family that I've got two sisters, and and we know within human complexity that even from the get-go, the name and the designation of sex, but we know for a fact that for a lot of people, all of that can sometimes be completely irrelevant in terms of who they are. You know what I mean? They might get to 20, or they might get to a particular period of time in their life where they go, I don't feel like a Greg, and I don't feel like this, and we're not being liberal in that, or we're not being woke. For those of you who think maybe we're being woke, we're just saying that a lot of what we're given straight after birth, and what we accumulate through our family, through our culture, through the institutions, the organizations, the religious constructs, the philosophical constructs, the social constructs, a lot of the stuff that gets downloaded at us, because we start out as dependent creatures needing strong attachment to primary caregivers. And that's Gabor Mate's big thesis, is every single human person that is born is born as a dependent. We need that for a long period of time. But in the development of those attachments, and in what is downloaded to us from our external environment, that a lot of the time, what I would broadly call our socialization, comes also to become the way we define ourselves. Right now, and there's inherently nothing wrong with that, until you get to a point in life where you go, there's another thing going on inside me. There's a voice inside of me. There's an energy inside of me. There's something inside of me that wants to express itself, and sometimes we get to a point in life where we go, it's not being allowed to express itself, and so we get whatever we get. Some people get depressed, some people get anxious, some people they might get some kind of a pathology because there's an element of them that isn't being allowed to play. In my life, I just went through so many situations where I just felt like this doesn't fit. I'm at this school and they're making us do all this stuff, and I don't fit here.
Yeah.
I'm playing a role, and the role has nothing to do with who I am. Or I'm trying to. I feel like I'm being asked to be something that has got nothing to do with me.
Yeah, this is I mean, this is an interesting point too, because we say a lot that essence seeps out and that it can't help but seep out. And it comes out in a variety of different ways, you know, quietly and in flow if you let it. But if you're not letting it and it's being constrained, then it starts to, I don't know, cause a bit of havoc or, you know.
Well, it completely can, because, you know, because it's hard work to constantly be something that you're not. It's really hard work for an eagle to swim across the ocean, because its wings were not designed to swim. They were designed to fly. So you find anywhere in nature where I think, in the book, Way of the Heart, the way I pictured this is the majestic lion sitting on a barrel with a trainer in front of it being asked to jump through a hoop.
Yeah.
That is not what a lion is meant to do.
Yeah.
The lion is meant to eat the trainer and spit out the hoop. You know what I mean? And then go and terrorize all the people watching it in the circus. That's what a real lion would do.
Yeah.
The fact that this animal has been subjugated to such a minimal, kind of not an expression of novelty for a crowd, means that something fundamental has been lost in that creature. It's not acting like a lion. So our whole thing is that freedom comes with alignment to that essential essence. And if you don't align to that essence, at some point you become unwell. At some point your life becomes diminished. Or what we would say, really, really, to sum it up really simply, we say at some point you lose freedom.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the first question is, are you free?
Yeah.
Because at some point you've lost yourself. So, it's the first two questions. I don't feel free and I don't know who I am anymore. And there's a million people out there who don't feel free. And what's more, when you say, who are you in your essence? They go, I have no idea about my essence.
Yeah. The temptation is to ask, how do you get to that point? But we kind of talk about that in our courses. So
which is no harm, no foul. We can talk about it now too.
We can, but I think probably another question that I have is, when you're not living in accordance with your essence, what are the feelings that become associated with that? And I ask a lot about, what does something feel like? Because if this concept is brand new for somebody, you might not be able to logically understand it, but we can understand and relate to a feeling. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is this whole idea of hoax and hustle for me. Like two words that I haven't used my whole adult life, but living continually externally to try and be something that I'm not for someone else, that's a complete hoax. I'm trying to be something that I'm not. So, and the effort it takes to keep being what you're not is a hustle. You look at so many people, their life is a hustle. So busy, so busy trying to prove themselves, so busy trying to get there. And so you talk to a lot of people and they have, when this happens.
Yeah.
And there's this sense that life will somehow be something tomorrow when I get to that point. So they're often projecting into the future. So, what does it feel like? It feels like a continual projection. It feels like the proverbial, donkey with the carrot on the stick. The donkey's always trying to move towards the carrot, but the closer the donkey gets, the stick keeps moving further away. So it feels like a hustle. It feels like, getting up every day and having to re-engage at a different level. None of that being particularly easy. A lot of that being really painful and quite hard. In my life, I think, it was, and this depends on the disposition or the personality of the person, right? Again, which I think is not, which is substantively an aspect of essence. But for me, it felt like I was inadequate. And so my native response so often when I went into a situation was, what do I have to do to belong?
Yeah.
So I might go and say deliver a seminar to a group of people, and I'm standing in front of them and I'm worried about what they think.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly gauging the external environment as opposed to just turning up and go, hey, this is what I got to offer. It's really irrelevant whether these people like it or not. If they don't like it, they won't ask me back. If they do like it, they will. So there was no freedom in the delivery. It's going in, engaging the room. It's going to a social event and just going, sometimes for some people, it's going to a social event and going, where's the safest place I can retreat to?
Yeah.
Because this other people, it's like, oh, I've got to go to this social event and I got to project. I got to be loud. I've got to be switched on, So, you meet people who they get into a context and they talk too much. They talk too loud. They compensate. So for different people, depending on how they roll, it just comes across as this extra thing that we try and add to our life in order to get there, in order to be that. Because there's this fundamental conviction that there's this fundamental orientation of being externally orientated rather than being internally grounded.
That's a funny one because at least in my life, logically, I am connected to my essence and I can be in any given situation. And if I really focus and really try, I can, does my essence actually care about this? And I can reground myself in my essence. But that has to be a really intentional practice because the dominant energy when I go into a space that I'm not necessarily comfortable with isn't one of I'm super zenned out and connected. It's that energy of, am I safe? How do I belong? Or how do I build rapport? Or how do I make sure that things go smoothly? So when we talk about essence, it's a funny thing because I fundamentally do believe that my essence underpins everything that I do, especially for big decisions. But when it comes down to the micro day-to-day things, it's a lot harder to continually be acting from that space.
Completely. So, but what you really accurately chronicled there was different energetic impacts, right?
Yeah.
So when you're scanning the room, when you're, what have I got to do to be safe? That's fundamentally, that's an emotional state. That's a limbic state. That's a fight, fright, flight. If we simplified it, it's a fight, fright, flight kind of awareness of where's safe, where's not safe, who can I talk to, who can I not talk to. So that's kind of scanning the room, and that's your emotional system scanning the room and looking at that. And then the brain will come in on the back of that and it will say, okay, do this, do that. Here's a good strategy. Be this, say that. Don't talk to that person. So there'll be some kind of cognitive discernment around how you want to operate in that space, what you observe, how you internalize that. The reality is your heart really doesn't give a shit about any of that. Your heart isn't scanning the place to go, oh, that person might not like me, or that person's this or that. Your heart's just going, this is who I am. We've got cats wandering around here meowing because in their heart, they don't care. Like not only do they not understand we're filming a podcast, they wouldn't care even if they did understand. We've got Bloss out the back watering something. She doesn't care either, like she wants to be in the gate. So you find that when someone's grounded in their essence, they're not insensitive to other people, right? But they just do their thing. Your essence is fundamental to everything that we do. And yet if we allow these other energies to dominate, they actually will. And they have much physical, emotional, mental, and egoic energy are really loud. They're big, loud energies. And so there is a process of learning to go, thank you very much, but there's another voice. Now, the other voice and the other energetic impact is obviously heart energy. It's a lot quieter. It's a lot more grounded. It's a lot stiller. But it's absolutely less. It's less externally orientated. And so there is some there is some skill, which is why Way of the Heart exists. There is some skill in terms of just not so much getting to heart energy. You can't get to something that you already have. So there's no gap analysis here. You have heart energy. When you focus on it, you can walk into any situation and just go, it kind of doesn't really matter.
Mm.
You know, well, that's going to affect your attachments, right? Because sometimes you walk into an environment and you go, it really matters what they think.
Yeah.
Heart energy goes, really doesn't.
Yeah.
Because if they don't like you or they don't want what you do, then the fact is, in your heart and in your essence, you shouldn't be there.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like a dog can go to the pussycat picnic, but if the cats don't like it being there, puppy dog probably shouldn't be there. It's a really, really bad analogy, but you know what I mean? Like, it's the same for us. Like when I walk into a space and in my heart I go, this isn't my place. I shouldn't be here.
Mm.
Like I felt that very much about institutional religion.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I tried to change it, and when I realized it's not going to change, the thing that really needed to change was me. I needed to get out.
But that's a funny example because I feel like being a daughter and having witnessed a lot of that, that journey was a really long unfolding. It was a really long process between realizing that you fundamentally didn't belong and then getting out. And there was a long period of wrestling with it and doubling down and trying alternate ways.
It's a really good observation. And I think that observation comes off the back of the fact that someone, still a friend,
nice caveat.
yes, still a friend, actually, who left the church as well and is now sailing around the world. So has completely kind of dropped the agenda. But they said to me when I was working in that space, they said, if you want to change it, you have to be part of it to change it.
Right.
So for at least 10 to 12 years of my life, there was like, you don't get to walk away if you haven't done the hard work.
Right.
So I was in there trying to reform something that fundamentally was highly recalcitrant and was not going to be reformed, right?
Mm.
Like it wasn't going to change. And no matter how hard I tried, what I kept on experiencing was resistance, was pushback, was. And so I would try another different avenue, try to get leverage. I had the realization that this institutional creature and this kind of, and that the institution of church was even worse because it evoked people's fundamental beliefs about truth.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that religious people don't negotiate is their perception of truth, right? So there was this kind of tribal narrative which had been embedded not as mythic framework, which is what Campbell would say, but the mythic framework had become literal truth. And so when you're dealing with people go, no, the Bible is literal truth and it cannot be negotiated. I was chipping away at that rock. That's a granite rock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was taking more skin off and more pain off me than I was off it. And in the end, I realized I don't think it's my job to shift that.
Mm.
Not only will I not be successful at that, but I don't think that I should even be here. The analogy I always use was like, if you're captaining a ship that you don't think you should be on anymore and you don't think anyone else necessarily should be on anymore, probably you shouldn't be the captain.
Yeah.
Probably someone that really believes in where we're sailing, really believes in the sturdiness of the ship, really believes the crew's fantastic. If you don't have any of those convictions, you need to jump overboard. They're not going to jump overboard.
Yeah.
So when I realized that, and when I realized you're not going to shift it, and really the problem here is actually you, because you're the one they all seem to feel like they're okay, but you're in a place where you're not being authentic to true self.
Mm.
You're not being real.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, then I'm out.
And it's not that you're the problem. It's that you're in a space that is not congruent with the deepest part of who you are.
100%.
And that's a funny thing to lean into because it manifests not just in religion, but it happens in workplaces, it happens in relationships. I mean, I've had workplaces and relationships where I've been there and known in the deepest part of who I am, you shouldn't be here. This isn't right.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I've warred between what I know and then because I haven't got any solid proof yet,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'll just stick it out or I'll just try
Yeah.
harder or
Yeah.
I'll just double down because, you know, I have this feeling, but I don't think that I can trust it. When realistically, that's my essence
It is.
whispering at me.
Yeah.
And when I ignore it, it's like the universe is like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So we say in Way of the Heart, and in the early poems of Way of the Heart, we say the heart doesn't cut deals, doesn't do compromises, doesn't cut deals, doesn't do half measures. When you know in your heart, this is my truth, then your heart isn't going to compromise that truth. And that's why we say the heart is an ally to your essence. It's an ally to your essence because if your essence is this and you're trying to be something or do something which is contrary to essence, your heart is that thing that feels disquiet. Your heart is that thing that feels unsettled. You said it a minute ago. You said, I knew in my heart I wasn't meant to be there. It's not like you can do it. It's not like you can say, okay, heart, I know I'm not meant to be here, but can we do a deal? And the heart will go, no, I represent your essence. We're not doing a deal. I'm the consigliere of your essence. You know, it's like we don't do deals. It's like it's this way. And then what your brain as an external focus, your mind as an external focused entity, energy, then turns around and says, well, what about this?
Yeah.
It's so creative. It comes up with a narrative. It says, well, what about if we think about it a little bit differently? And the heart goes, it's not a thinking thing. It's a knowing thing.
Yeah.
It's a knowing thing. And the head goes, oh, I don't think it is. What about this story? And the heart goes, no, we're not. You can throw 1,000 stories at me. This is what essence requires.
Yeah.
And then your emotions might kick in and say, well, that's just not fair. That's just not even realistic. I feel so overwhelmed, you know. So like I can't begin to tell you that so many people that I might coach, they tell me this incredible story. And it is an incredible story. They believe it is the ultimate truth of what's going on in their life. Yeah, that's fantastic. And you go, well, what does your heart say? And they go, well, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And we explain a little bit and we push a little bit and go, what do you think in your heart? And they go, I just think this. And inevitably it's short. And as soon as they say it, as soon as they say what they think their heart, the next thing that comes in off the back of that is they go, but.
Yeah.
But. And they jump back into the story. They jump back into the emotions about that. It's hard because the heart isn't showing up as a representative of your essence. The heart isn't showing up with a counter story. It doesn't justify itself. It doesn't give you a thesis on, it doesn't give you a plan. It doesn't give you a strategic roadmap or a tactical roadmap. You might be in a job, you might even be in a career and your heart just says, this is done. You're done. You know, that's happened twice in my life where I've built careers in spaces, one early on in organized religion, which finished in my 40s, and then one in corporate space. And when both of them ended, you know, in my early 50s when it ended, and Bloss would say to me, what are you going to do now? And I knew in my heart I was never going back to corporate. And I just knew I couldn't from my heart say I'm going to do this because Way of the Heart hadn't emerged. But I ended up having to say to her, and sometimes I made up things. I said, oh, I might try this. And she'd go, I hate that. That's a horrible idea. You know, I'd be going, it's just the best idea I got. But what I really needed to say to her is I needed to say, in my heart, I know I cannot do this, and I will not do that. And I will sit in this space of waiting for my heart to tell me what I need to do as an expression of who I am.
Yeah.
That's the heart transaction, right?
I think that practice is robust and really, really difficult, particularly because actually I think this is also kind of weighed with the understanding that if you do stay in that space, it's going to hurt just as much. Like the pain of being somewhere where you're compromising who you are is just as bad as, it's arguably worse than being brave enough to step out of that and go, okay, I'm going to sit in this space of liminality, or I'm going to lean into this space of trusting where my essence wants to take me or where my heart wants to take me, even if I don't have a plan, even if it looks like waiting for something to emerge.
Yeah, well, it's not modeled for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have lost our wisdom traditions in modern society, right? So we dismiss religion as fundamentally tribal, which it is. You know what I mean? I'm not saying don't have a faith or don't have a belief system. I probably am saying observe that faith is expressed presently as a tribal, in, out, right, wrong, black, white, good, bad, of us, not of us, right? So yes, there's a lot of comfort when you're in the tribe, but if you suspend the tribal element and you just look at yourself as an individual, then you might find, as I did, some incongruence between the way the tribe rolls and who you really are, right? But we've essentially, because our religions have become tribal and the vast majority of people just go, I don't want that, right? And because we've lost our wisdom traditions, so many people don't know how to sit in what you call the liminal space.
Yeah.
Now, liminality just is a betwixt and between space. The limen in Latin was the massive plate on the floor that when you were in this big room of the castle and you were going into that room of the castle, you had a lintel on the top and a limen down the bottom, and the walls were that thick. And so as you stepped into that space, you weren't in that room, but you're not in that room. So it's this, I'm not here anymore, but I'm not there either. So liminality is the betwixt and the between, the space that you move into when you've left that space, but you haven't arrived at the next space, right? And it describes, the experience of, okay, I'm here now, but what is here? And here is ostensibly a nothing, right? In Way of the Heart, that liminal space is a stepping back into essence. It's actually not a nowhere space. It's actually the ground of being. It's actually the fundamental space. Because what we do is we define ourselves by, well, I'm in this room and I'm doing this, and in this room I've got this identity, and when I move into this room I'll be doing this and I'll have this identity. When you step out of these kind of constructs back into a liminal space, then what you're really left with is self. Right? That's why in the tribes, not in ancient tribes, in tribal communities, the child would be raised, and then at some point, if they were a girl, they'd reach puberty, and then that would be its own liminal journey as she journeys from being a girl to a woman, and the boy would be taken out and he would have rites of initiation. Now, in his rites of initiation, he wasn't a boy anymore, but he wasn't a warrior yet either. So he goes in during the period of time of initiation, he's kind of he doesn't have an identity. He could be the chief's son or someone really important in the tribe, but in that space, he doesn't have an identity, right? So he loses all of that in the liminal space. But what he's meant to find in the liminal space, in the initiation spaces, he's meant to find the ground of his own being. Yeah. In North American tribes, if he's an Indian warrior, he goes out and finds his spirit animal. They might have some mystical experience. They might give them ayahuasca or peyote or, some kind of hallucinogen that gives them a big trip that takes them into some kind of psychic, space. And in that psychic space, they have an expanded awareness of who they are. Then they come back out of that trial and tribulation, but they come back in the ground of their own being as this warrior. And oftentimes in a lot of tribal situations, the women that once said, well, that's my son, they would pretend not to know this new warrior because they'd become something different, that they'd come back as a much more grounded individual. Well, we don't have that in modern society. We don't have this sense that as we step out of something, for us, it's all terror because we just go, what will I be?
Yeah.
Well, you'll be you.
Yeah. What narrative can I cling to?
Yeah. How do I define myself?
Yeah.
We don't have wisdom traditions that say, hey, that's okay. That's actually necessary. So we have people perpetually addicted to the need to define themselves, the need to project that definition, the need to acquire stuff that tells you who I am. I live here, I drive this car, I have this job, I dress in these clothes. They're all externalities trying to communicate a message about who someone is. But the essence doesn't need any of that. It doesn't need any of that. So when you step out of one thing, raw and naked in terms of, metaphysically, psychologically, raw and naked into the ground of your own being, you are in a true space. Hopefully whatever you step into next is a greater expression of that organic rawness. If you step into something, forget the organic rawness and put on another persona and become another thing, you've just abandoned yourself again. And we see that kind of self-abandonment all the time. It's the classic self-betrayal. If you won't believe in yourself, how can I believe in you?
Yeah.
And you're right. That liminal space it feels like a terrifying space to go. But, you go back to the ridiculous analogy of the eagle trying to swim across the water. Is it terrifying for the eagle to throw itself off a cliff and fly? Yeah. Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been an eagle, but I imagine it's like, wow, that's a heavy thing to do. I hope these wings work. But that's less terrifying than an eagle trying to swim across an ocean. It's better off to try and fly. So when you come to that liminal space, that place of betwixt and between, where you encounter the ground of your own being, it will be terrifying. It will be a seminal major moment in your life, but that moment will be less terrifying than trying to wear the mask of something that you're not. Constantly the vigilance required to constantly gauge who I need to become in order to be accepted. That shit's exhausting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That shit does not work. And that's why I had 7 years where I was in the liminal space for 7 years with Way of the Heart until I worked through my own method of working through this, which is Way of the Heart. But that was less painful than going into another career to become something that had nothing to do with who I was.
Right.
You know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know that kind of journey in your own story, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
And would you say, let me ask you a question, would you say that leaning into the process of becoming a truer version of yourself is, whilst it's hard, would you say it's more rewarding than staying in a system where you've got to play act at being something?
Absolutely, because I think that leaning into that ultimately leads to freedom. And I think, there have been a number of aspects of my life where I've had to lean into the truth of who I am and my essence, and that's been hard at every step. But I've felt that almost instant relief of, oh, thank goodness I don't have to pretend anymore.
Yeah.
Like, thank goodness I don't have to wear this mask all the time. And there has been a sense of, I feel free now.
Yeah.
And then from that place, I'm able to become myself in a much more expansive way.
And would you say that's beautiful, and I think it's beautifully articulated. Would you say that what makes that process of just embracing who you truly are at an essence level, at a heart level, is because you're attached to, or you survey the world that you're in and you're weighing up what's going to be the impact with this person, what's going to be the impact with that relationship, what's this going to mean here? Yeah. What about, is there, if I do this, I won't have any money. If I say this person will reject me. If I, do you think that it's the attachment to the externalities, or?
No, I mean, I think the attachment to the externalities is kind of it's like the excuses that fear throws up before you step into that threshold.
Completely.
And as soon as you acknowledge that, and as soon as you go, that's fear and that's trying to keep me safe, that's okay, I need to put that to the side now,
Yeah.
it's a completely different experience, because after you do put that aside and you go, I need to honor who I am, it's almost like there's no other option. Or at least for me, as
Yeah.
soon as I've known,
Yeah.
there's no other
Yeah.
option. I can't
Yeah.
continue to deny myself. And so when I move into a space where I'm honoring who I am and I'm living in accordance with my essence, I don't care I don't care what anybody else thinks or
And
says.
this kind of leads into the beautiful truth of it is like when you've done that, those things that fear was throwing up, you know, if there was 10 things that fear was throwing up, you know, when you move into that place of alignment with your own essence, how many of the 10 things did you really have to deal with?
Like none.
And that's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, because when I've been mentoring people in the past, we get to this place where essence reveals itself, where their essence reveals itself. And then they tell me, you know, then normally so many people tell me all the reasons why they can't be that,
Yeah.
you know, and that's like you said, that's fear throwing up all these things, and they're attached to those things, right? You know, they might have invested a lot of time in a career or a relationship or whatever it is that they're saying is the reason why they can't be aligned to essence, right? But then when they do align to essence, like you were talking about, they find that they're not even having to deal with that
Yeah.
stuff. Like what they were attached to, what they projected, what fear was kind of so apprehensive about. They walk into it and they go, that wasn't, I never even had to
Deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's like what fear presented was almost like a mirage. The closer as they leaned into their fear, whatever fear had, it just kind of evaporated. Which is not to say that it was easy.
Yeah. Not at all.
But it is to say that the map that fear draws about why you can't live according to your essence and live according to your heart, the map that it paints or the picture that it paints, when you walk into the real landscape, that picture is inevitably not true. That's what I've found.
Totally.
It's not real.
Yeah. And I'm that's been the case with my journey as well. It's that I think, though, for a lot of people, as was the case for me, and I think you as well, it's that willingness to step into that space.
Yeah.
I think that's what takes courage.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think it also is like, you don't have to have all the things that fear threw up. You don't have to have all those ducks in a row. You don't have to attend to all of them before you embrace essence or before you walk way of the heart. You walk way of the heart, and most of these you're not going to deal with. It's not that there's not things to deal with. It's not that the heart doesn't have things or relationships or connections or endeavors or projects that you engage in. It completely does have stuff for you to do and things that it wants you to walk out. And they come with their own challenges, right? But by and large, it's not the agenda set by fear. And it's a mistake, I think, at the front end. It's an internal mistake at the front end to see who you are and then think, oh, okay, I've got to deal with this, and this before I can be that. No, you are that. It's not a being thing. It's not a becoming thing. You already are that.
Yeah.
And as you become that, the curriculum will fold out.
Yeah.
But it won't be fear's curriculum. Yeah.
I think that circles back really well to the original question about essence.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up this episode, is there a practice or a touchstone or a tip that we can leave people with? Because I feel like we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have.
So I feel like it'd probably be good to leave something small.
Well, I mean, the comment that always comes to me is essence is as essence must be. You know, essence, you may want it to, you know, like most people have never sat with their true essence and taken it seriously. Most people have lived with a socialization to the point where, you know, they've got this crafted version of themselves. Raw essence is raw essence. I always say a frangipani is a frangipani is a frangipani. The frangipani's growing in the garden and it looks at the rose and goes, gee, I'd like to be a rose. Well, unlucky, you're a frangipani. You know? Because essence is as essence must be. And the freedom in life is when we embrace the essence that we are. And you find that it's beautiful and it's complex and it's amazing and it has its own nuances. Um, and really, the art is just to find a way to do that. Is like for me, it was, in all honesty, it was solitude. It was journaling. It was processing. That's unique to me. I'm
Yeah.
not suggesting anyone else do that. For you, just you find that rhythm where you get to connect to what you feel is the ground of your own being, whatever that is, however you do that. Maybe it's listening to music, maybe it's dancing, maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's swimming in the ocean, maybe it's, I don't know. I mean, it's a million things for a million different people. But you do that and you start surrendering, you start laying down the layers, you start letting go. You just go, okay, take me where you need to take me. Now, inevitably for me, as I said, take me where you want to take me, the feeling that I got back was, this is going to be very weird. This is going to be
Yeah.
very strange. You might become something that you never thought you'd become. And the reality is you're not actually becoming anything other than what you always were. You're just taking off the guardrails that have stopped you being allowed to be who you really are. And that'll look like it looks like, and you just bring loving kindness and acceptance to that.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, good to chat.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Heart Riffing. If today's conversation resonated, you can find more of our work, including courses, mentoring, and workshops, at www.wayoftheheart.com.au or on our Instagram, Way of the Heart Official. We'd love to hear your thoughts, reflections, or questions, so please always feel free to message or comment. We look forward to seeing you next time.